everyone, and as requested, I am here to talk about the new Greta Gerwig directed Little Women that is out in theaters now, and it came out Christmas Day, so it's very new to being on the scene. But Megan and I thought it only appropriate, since it's Louisa May 2020, that we would both do videos about this, and we were both very, very excited to see this adaptation. So I'm looking forward to talking about it and chatting in the comments. I know that it can be kind of scary to go see an adaptation of a favorite book, just kind of wondering what the vision of the director is going to be, what they're going to do with it, and it can just be kind of nerve-wracking. But my fears were kind of immediately alleviated when I went into this film. I was worried it was going to be, I was worried it was going to be a lot more cynical than the novel is, because I know a lot of people's complaint about this book is that it is like sugary sweet. And so I kind of thought, like, what is Greta Gerwig going to do with this? And I haven't seen Lady Bird or any of the other films that she's directed, which I could have just done that and maybe felt more like I would have trusted her with this book. But I came out overall really happy, really, really happy, and kind of just enchanted by this adaptation. But now, as a couple of days have gone on, and kind of the just the awe of the beauty of this adaptation is kind of settling, I am able to think about some of the things that, I'm not sure how I felt about that, or I wasn't as enthusiastic about this aspect of it. So yeah, I will just tell you kind of what I really liked about it, what I didn't like about it, and I'll be interested to see, for those of you that have seen it, to hear what you thought about it. So the first aspect that was a really different way to tell this story, and I thought was a really good move, was to tell the story. We start out with the beginning of Good Wives. And I should say, if you are watching this, there will definitely be spoilers for this movie and for various plot elements of the story of Little Women. But moving on, so it starts out at the beginning of Good Wives. So the girls are a little bit older, and Jo is in New York City, and Amy is in Europe. So there's been a lot that's happened from the first book, but we haven't seen that yet. So what I really liked about that is I think there are a fair number of Little Women fans who feel really sentimental and so incredibly attached to Laurie and Jo being together as a couple, that it's really hard for them to kind of ever move on from that, even if it might not have been the best thing for Laurie and Jo to end up together. And I think some of us, like in our heart of hearts, we know that, but we just remember these really sweet times that they had and what good friends they were. And so this kind of gives you this emotional distance from that, and you can process all of it later on when you're ready for it. But you immediately meet the professor in the very beginning of the movie. So you're kind of, I feel like you are willing to give him more of a chance. Then, in addition to that, I like that you start out getting to see Amy as an adult. I think some readers really hold childhood Amy against her because she is despicable. She's dreadful with, burning Jo's book and just weaseling a lot of money out of Meg for pickled limes and different things like that, and just kind of wanting to be the center of attention all the time. So I like that you can kind of, because you can kind of treat maybe childhood Amy as childhood Amy and not hold it against her when she's older, because the other sisters, I'm sure, especially some of the things that Jo is very fiery, so I'm sure there are many things that she did that we might hold against her, but we don't see any of that because we meet Jo when she's older. So I thought that was an interesting and good move creatively to do. So then we're getting flashbacks over time. And I just enjoyed the flow of the plot that way. As always, though, I do feel that you get a lot more time with the professor in the end of the book in Good Wives. He's staying in Concord for a while, and it's like he has this rushed visit that he does really quickly in the movie. So that I feel like I haven't seen a film adaptation where I feel like totally like you get to see the development of their relationship and how that happens. But one element that I did feel like really suffered the emotional engagement was actually the John Brooke and Meg March relationship romance. James Norton played John Brooke, and he is just known as being like so dreamy, and he plays Sidney Chambers in the Grantchester Mysteries. He is in War and Peace. He was also in Cheerful Weather for the Wedding, and he's just known as being like, oh, so dreamy, you know. And there really was not much time given to him. And I know John Brooke, the type of character that he is really shy and reserved. But I will talk in future videos kind of about how I thought John Brooke was really well done. I think part of it is that, yes, his character is shy and reserved, but they also gave him such little time on screen. It was like, you kind of get when they do Camp March and they're at the beach having fun for the day, you see he and Meg off in the distance laughing together, but you don't know what they're laughing at. And you just hear Joe say things like, oh, Mr. Brooke, he's so boring. And Meg saying like, I like him, he's kind. But you don't get to see them actually falling in love, really. You kind of see them off in the distance, like I said, at Camp March talking, but that's not enough for me to really like feel like I'm rooting for the couple. And then it's just like, you go from that to they're engaged. And I don't know. I just felt like I felt really distant from John and Meg in this one. So there is another version where I prefer John and Meg, but I'm going to give you kind of a teaser, and I'm not going to say which one that is yet. So that was one aspect actually that I felt really suffered. And unfortunately also, I didn't think that Emma Watson, like, she did not blow me away as Meg March. And I'm really sad to say that, because I love Emma Watson. I follow her on social media. I love the Harry Potter films. I really enjoyed the new Disney Beauty and the Beast. I don't think I've seen her I haven't seen Perks of Being a Wallflower. It just didn't really interest me. But I don't think I've seen her in anything else. Or nothing else is coming to mind. Oh, I've seen her in Ballet Shoes, and I really like that. So it's not that I don't like Emma Watson. It's just that I thought there was nothing really like interesting or amazing that was done with her in this role. I felt like Meg can be interesting, but it's hard to do interesting things with her. So there is that. So then I'll just go the rest of the characters. Then Saoirse Ronan played Jo March, and I really, really liked her as Jo. I thought she had her like vivacity and her kind of brash behavior sometimes, and just her frankness, and the different lines like Meg told me not to say capital or Christopher Columbus, and her American accent. All the American accents I was like very, very happy with, because I was a little like, why are you hiring like all people who aren't Americans to play in Little Women? But then they did the accent really well, so it didn't really bother me. It wasn't a thing. I was really, really happy with Saoirse Ronan's portrayal, and I love the costumes that they did, because Jo is kind of supposed to dress in not a super like feminine frilly way, and so I'm just thinking they had a lot of like sort of simple patterns on skirts, and then she would wear a vest with like a shirt with a collar on it, and I just thought it looked so lovely, because she can still look feminine, but not super frilly and Miss Priss kind of thing, as contrasted with Amy, who's really into that. So I really loved the costuming in this also. And then Beth, I really like the actress who played Beth. Let me scroll down because I have it up. Was Eliza Scanlon. And I was saying, because I went with my sister and sister-in-law, and as we were walking out, I was like, she just looked like such a Beth. Like, she has such a sweet face. And I really thought, she just looked so sweet, and she really looked the part. And I wish we had a few more bits with Beth, but I was really happy at her portrayal. I felt like she really had like internalized the character of Beth, and I really, really liked that. They did a really nice job in this version of the relationship between Mr. Lawrence, Grandfather Lawrence, and Beth, and just showing that connection that they had. And I loved, he's not there for when she opens the piano, but she runs over to tell him thank you. And she can't even get out the words, but he just knows. And she goes over and hugs him. And they just have this really sweet connection. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And then the next sister, I've been going back and forth over what I think about it. So Florence Pugh is the one who played Amy. And I've been going back and forth over what I thought, because when I first came out of there, I was thinking, oh my goodness, like a version where we can finally like Amy. And she was so fun. She was, I kind of almost think out of the four sisters, she was the most magnetic and effervescent performer that was there. And she just had this larger than life giggle and the expressions. And when she was crying after getting her hands hit after, the pickled limes, like just the crying was so exaggerated, and always wanting her nose to be smaller, and the physical humor. So what I really enjoyed out of Amy was seeing the contrast between when she's a little girl to when she's older, because she is much more serious and kind of reserved when she's older. So I was just in awe of Florence Pugh's performance. Honestly, out of the four sisters, that's the one that I really relished the most. But then I was looking kind of at some discussion boards in the past couple days about Amy in this movie. And some people kind of felt it wasn't really true to the character of Amy. Like, no, we really aren't supposed to like her that much. And so I'm kind of going back and forth over what I think. I know from Eden's Outcasts that the sister that Amy is based on, May, was really vivacious and people loved to be around her. She was kind of a life of the party type personality. And so maybe have we been misreading Amy? Like, have we just been holding these faults against her? And I honestly feel like rereading Little Women all over again right now, but I really don't want to lose steam for my Louisa May project. So I think I will not do that. But it just has me really wondering, kind of, have we just been reading the character of Amy wrong? And is it just, everyone has their faults, but hers are more out in the open? I'm not sure. I don't know what to think. So as far as watching the movie goes, I really, really enjoyed Amy in that. And I kind of thought, well, maybe she's just more honest than other people are. And she says what she wants. Is it so wrong to say you want to marry for money? Like that's in that day and age, there wasn't really much she could do to work for a living. And she gives this whole speech about that. So I am just really, I don't know what to think. I'm not sure. I guess because I think movie adaptations should be canon. And I don't know if Amy being that likable is canon, if that makes sense. But I still really enjoyed it. So yeah, I will be thinking on that. Timothy Chalamet as Laurie, I loved. He was, there was a real liveliness to this adaptation. And I remembered seeing interviews, with the different actresses, and they were saying that the way Greta Gerwig had the script written, all of the sentences are on top of one another that the different characters are saying. So when one is done, when one character is done, the other one comes in as soon as that one is done. And it's really just it had this larger than life feel to it. And I found that really interesting, and I liked it. It had this really just lively, fun atmosphere to it. And on top of that, I really enjoyed the soundtrack, had a really whimsical feel to it. And it kind of almost like a fairy tale-ish type element to it. So yeah, it was gorgeously shot. It was so beautiful. The other aspect that unfortunately I think suffered a little bit was I didn't feel like we got as many Marmee scenes as I was hoping for. I think we don't see Marmee until about like a half hour into the film. I might be exaggerating, but it was definitely a bit of the way into the film until we actually got to lay eyes on Marmee. I liked Laura Dern's performance, so there was nothing against, against how she played it. I just thought, boy, I usually feel like we get some more Marmee scenes than we did. And I really enjoyed Meryl Streep as Aunt March. I thought she did just such a wonderful job, and it was a joy to watch her. And she's so good. So I can't fault her at all. Mr. March, who played Mr. March? or Father March, Bob Odenkirk. As always with the character of Mr. March, you know, he comes in, you're kind of like, who is this? And you just don't feel that attached to him, even though all the girls are. So yeah, but I was kind of expecting to feel that way about Mr. March. Except for one adaptation, which I keep doing teasers, but there are more Little Women film adaptation videos coming, so do not worry. So in summary, I really, really liked this. I thought the performances were just amazing. And the only part that I was really bummed about was that I felt like the Meg and John romance, which I think is a really sweet aspect, it was kind of shortchanged. I did just think of one other thing, which this is kind of controversial. So I will link the article my sister-in-law sent to me because she texted me after we had seen it, like the next day. And she's like, hey, I was just wondering, did you think that Joe and the professor were married at the end? And the ending scene is they're at Plumfield and it's Marmie's birthday and they bring her a cake. And there, you know, at Plumfield is Joe and the professor and Amy and Lori and Meg and John. And I was like, yeah, they were totally married. But then she sent me this article and there were certain ways that they played with the scenes at the end where it made it look like, well, I didn't think this until I read the article, but that Joe and the professor ending up together was Joe finishing the ending of the book Little Women. It's like very meta because there's a book of Little Women within the film of Little Women. And the part of the plot is that Joe is writing this book about their lives. And after reading that article, I'm like, oh, you know what? I could see Greta Gerwig doing that, like leaving it vague and up to interpretation. So I'm very not like a postmodern viewer. Like I said before, it has to be canon. It has to be in the book. And so then I saw an article, she said she left it up to interpretation whether Joe and the professor ended up together. And I really don't like that. Like, I'm like, you are just telling, you are the bearer of the story. You don't get to change it. Like, just write your own story then. Or write a fan fiction. So that was that's how I feel about that sort of thing. But I wasn't annoyed about it though, because it's vague enough of a thing that if you want to see it that way, you can. But I definitely don't like it when directors make a move like that. So I think I will cut it off here before this video gets too long. If you have seen it, let me know. I do hope you go see it. If you are a Little Women fan, I think it's very worth your time. And I will be back for another video soon. Bye.